A or something.
Okay, now it's recording.
Okay. And mine's is showing up. Should be, I think it's recording.
It says up in the top left corner that it's recording.
This meeting is being recorded. Okay. All right. All right, good. How are you doing,
I'm doing
bud?
good. I'm doing good. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Friggin' this is yeah, this is probably my favorite movie. To be honest with you.
Fire Walk with Me is your favorite film?
Probably, yeah.
Oh,
It's right up there. Like it's 100, like David Lynch's stuff is I love pretty much all of it.
yeah, me
And
too.
I think this is David Lynch's best work, in my
I agree
opinion.
with you that it's one of his best films. Um,
Yeah. A lot of people say Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet.
yeah, I'm more partial to Lost Highway. That's probably my personal favorite. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, okay, let me get going. Just pulling up my notes. Bum, bum, bum. Wait,
where do
sorry.
you post this discussion? Do you put it on a YouTube channel?
Yeah, so w AI should be up um sooner. I mean, should be up soonish, I think, because we have like a bunch of stuff recorded and we release like one a week,
Right.
and then it gets posted up on YouTube, and then just like regular like Spotify and all the other audio
How many views do you
podcast
get?
stuff.
Like, what's the average number of views?
Depends on the episode, really. I mean, we just started posting up on YouTube, so um I don't know. I think we just released Silence of the Lambs like a couple of days ago, and that was, I don't know, I think we got like 100 views so far. So I mean, we're trying to, I think we put out a pretty good product. So it's a matter of just getting people to listen to it.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part, especially you're competing with like just a bunch of bullshit too, right? Like,
Yeah.
people with like hot takes and all this other, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like,
Yep.
so, it's just, yeah, but like it's coming along. It does pretty good. Um I think so. I enjoy doing this, and I mean eventually I'd like to get to the point where maybe you get like enough couple people donating, right? And then, I could maybe just cut back on my hours and kind of just do this and work a little bit less, right?
Yep.
So that would be the goal. Plus maybe you could free me up to do other stuff too, right? So,
Yep. Absolutely.
right. Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Big Screen, where today we are once again joined by John David Ebert. Hey John, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. I'm a cultural critic. I've written about 30-ish books on various aspects of the arts, film, graphic novels, works of literature, all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing that for decades. All those books are available on Amazon. And I also have a school, the John David Ebert School for the Study of Culture, Cosmology, and the Arts. Right now, we're reading through Finnegan's Wake. We're about halfway through James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake in that class right now. And we're getting ready to do another one in a few weeks. Um, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I tried reading Finnegan's Wake, and I'm probably going to need you. I probably need your class to help me understand it.
It's rough. Yeah, it's rough going. Yeah.
It's a
We've
very
got a core group. There's about five of us who always attend. They always show up and they always do the reading, and we're having a great time. It's a lot of fun.
So on today's episode, we're going to be tackling what I would say is my favorite film of all time, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And it came out in 92. It's written and directed by David Lynch with the help of Robert Engels on the script. This movie came about after the cancellation of the Twin Peaks TV show. and which the TV show is generally considered groundbreaking television. It really changed how everyone saw the medium. In particular, the first season, not so much the second season. We'll probably we might get into kind of just what happened to Twin Peaks a little bit during this episode. Um, yeah, and basically Twin Peaks. Well, I would say like if you haven't seen the Twin Peaks show, I would not listen to this podcast just because Fire Walk with Me basically ruins the entire mystery in the first season and part of the second season. And to be honest with you, I've heard people make arguments that Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me can work as a standalone film. And yeah, they're really
That's the only problem with it. I don't think you can understand the film without having seen those first two seasons, even though the events in it take place before episode one, season one. Nonetheless, it has a lot of references in it that can only be understood by having seen those two seasons.
yeah, you just there's no way you can understand it. Like my wife watched this movie with me because I told her it was my favorite movie, and she hadn't watched Twin Peaks, and she's like, I know the type of stuff that you like, and I've heard David Lynch's name before, and she's like, I'm not investing that many hours into it.
Right?
And I was like, okay, well, just watch this movie. And she's like, it's horrifying, but like I didn't understand what was going on. And there's no way you can really understand what's going on without having watched at least some of the TV show. It just wouldn't make sense. Like I listened to a couple people that were saying that it works as a standalone film, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. It can't. You have to have and then that's the thing is people push back on it and say, this is why this is like the main issue with the film. But I mean, if you look at art in general, like a lot of art in general, like unless you have like I wouldn't say there's examples in art where like unless you kind of have an understanding of something that was written previously, um, you wouldn't be able to understand something that happened later, right? Like
I'm not even
that's
sure
fine.
that you could understand George Lucas's Star Wars prequels without having seen the original films, even though they take place before it. Maybe, maybe. It would be interesting. I think I showed my son those films in chronological order, and we started with episode one, and he really loved those first three films, but then he was bored with the original three. When we got to them chronologically, I thought that was an interesting sort of indication of a generational shift in attention. I remember Lucas commenting on that in an interview. He said all the old school fans complain and they don't like the prequels, but the kids do. The kids actually prefer the prequels. It's just a generational slippage, but maybe so. But anyhow, I think with Firewalk with Me, no, it presupposes that you got to know something about that red room. What the hell is it? With the chevrons on the floor. You got to know something about who Dark Bob is. This figure from the astral plane that possesses her father. All those kinds of things are presupposed. So
Yeah, so and then I also say right off the bat, this is if you're sensitive to like subject matter such as like abuse and
yeah,
stuff like that, just I would say stop listening to it now because this is probably one of the, if not the most horrific depictions of abuse that Hollywood's probably ever produced. And in my opinion, so like I would say just stop watching it now.
it
I
is
mean,
pretty
stop
shocking.
listening.
It is
It's
pretty
shocking.
shocking. Yeah.
And so yeah, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is essentially it's a prequel to the TV show. And for 92, that was a pretty like bold move. Like I can't think of many prequels that came out like before like everyone was obsessed with doing remakes and sequels and prequels. I really can't.
That's true. It was a bit ahead of its time there, as the TV show was too. And the TV show, it was just a surprise. When I heard that David Lynch, by that point, he'd done Eraserhead and Elephant Man and the Dune movie and also Blue Velvet. And so I spotted his talent right away, despite the failure with Dune. It was just evident that he was not the right director for Dune. This isn't a space opera guy. I believe that he was offered to direct Return of the Jedi, and he turned it down. This is it's space opera is just not his genre. His genre is horror and noir and crossing horror and noir together, both of those two genres. And that's basically what we get in Twin Peaks. It's horror crossed with the genre of the sleuth detective invented by Edgar Allan Poe and Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle's character. That's what Cooper is. He's a transformation of that archetype, but with horror now that means we have present the astral plane, which is essentially what horror usually is about, unless we're just talking about stalkers and slashers and so forth. It's the eruption of the astral plane into this town called Twin Peaks. These spooky, discarnate, disembodied beings that have come in. And insofar as Lynch attempts to picture the astral plane, all we get of it is that red room. The red room with the chevrons on the floor. Now, those black and white chevrons are one of the world's oldest glyphs. They go all the way well back into the pottery Neolithic, 6000 BC, as a symbol for water. And so we've got the watery abyss there. And the red is, of course, associated with grave burials. Graves, ever since the Paleolithic, usually are sprinkled with red ochre. They put red ochre on them. And the best guess for why was my mentor, William Irwin Thompson, said it's menstrual blood. It's meant to be symbolic of menstrual blood because the reason the woman stops menstruating when she's pregnant, it was assumed, was because she's using that blood to build the embryo. Obviously, that would have been obvious to those people. So you put the red ochre on it as a symbol for menstrual blood to rebuild the next body for that person. So it has all these underworld associations. And the abyss, too, in Lynch, there's the abyss in the sense of the astral plane, which is an actual real abyss. It's a series of rings, actually, that surrounds the earth with discarnate, disembodied souls. So we should probably define what I mean by the astral plane first. Imagine it as a series of rings. Now, I've recently discovered that we go to the same place when we die that we go to when we dream. It's the astral plane. It's the same exact place. I've discovered this reading Robert Monroe's books, Journeys Out of the Body. He was the guy back in 1971 who figured out out-of-body experiences, and he taught himself astral projection, how to lift his astral body out of his physical body while awake, because we all do it every night. Every night, the astral body separates from the physical body, and the etheric body stays there because it keeps the body nice and warm and alive on all of its autonomic processes. Then the astral body goes into the astral plane and has all kinds of adventures every night. Then it goes back. So it's an automatic process that we all do every single night. But Robert Monroe taught himself how to do it consciously, and then he taught other people how to do it as well. And so his book is full of incredible journeys through the astral planes, all the weird creatures that he encounters. And he says, what will be there in the ring that's closest to the earth are the people who are asleep and dreaming. They are the ones who, we shouldn't say closest to the earth because it interpenetrates the earth. It's not physical. The astral plane is a different, subtle, energetic dimension that's always present with us. Certain people can be tuned into it and they'll pick it up. They might see ghosts. And the next realm after the dreamers, the people who are asleep and dreaming, having adventures, then there are the ghosts. These are the ones that Robert Monroe calls the locked in ones. They don't know they're dead. They're wandering around in the astral plane. They still have earthly attachments. They want to get back to their bodies, so they don't know where to go. And that state can go on for centuries, but not forever, because sooner or later, what the higher powers do is they will send rovers down to fetch them and bring them up into the bright light world that's beyond the astral plane called Divashan. So that's the cosmology here. And I think with artists like David Lynch, he may not consciously know that that's what his work is about, but it is. That's what he's doing. In fact, all of his films, almost all of them, are based on the invasion of the astral plane, except for a simple little film like The Straight Story. That has nothing to do with astral forces there. But yeah, so that's what's going on. And the other abyss then is the abyss of postmodern nihilism that these characters are heading toward, and art in general after World War II starts heading toward the abyss of meaninglessness. In postmodernity, things no longer mean anything. They're just sliding signifiers that have come unstitched from their quilting points where they're attached to a transcendental signified like the cross. That was a transcendental signified that anchored Western civilization with a steady system of signifiers, saints and angels and hierarchies and what have you. But all that has collapsed. It's all been dismantled. And as the result of that, we no longer have a metaphysical immune system to protect our psyches from invasion by beings from the astral plane, some of which are demonic, some of which are human. It depends. But I think Lynch is dealing more with the demonic types. Bob would be an example of a demonic entity.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because well, David Lynch, he's a big practitioner of transcendental meditation, right?
That's right.
He talks about it endlessly. Like it seems like those are the only two things he cares about in his life is like making films and transcendental meditation
I think
because
he
he
knows the
talks about it
basics
constantly.
of Indian philosophy. He seems to be aware of like the basics of it. So
Yeah. Um, well, like my overall like history with Twin Peaks is like it's a pretty personal show for me actually. Like it was
I mean,
it's really what
I was in
sparked the
college when it came out in 1990, and it was all the rage. We were all just, wow, did you see this fucking show last night? It was a big deal in college.
yeah, it was well, it's what really kind of sparked like the fire in my brain, I guess, like to I guess crib the title of the movie, like for like abstract thinking and artistic thinking. And I remember like like a pretty young age, my dad telling me to watch the show and like I'm not gonna lie, I almost kind of gave up after two episodes. I was like, what's going on here, right? The only thing that kept me watching the show was Audrey Horne, because like I
Oh
was
well,
like,
yeah. I was just about to guess it's either Audrey or Laura. But yeah, for me it would be Audrey. Laura's not my type. Audrey is precisely my type. Yeah.
yeah, I was Audrey
Oh,
Horne, and
yeah.
when I was a young kid, I was like, oh man, I had
Sherilyn
the
Fenn, right? That's her name.
yeah, yeah, I had the hots for her and just her
Oh, hell yeah.
character in general.
Absolutely.
But then the sequence happened, I believe it's in the third episode, if I'm remembering correctly, where Cooper has his dream and you see the dwarf and Laura and they're talking backwards and what you talked about with like the wave floor and the red curtains and I was just hooked. I was blown away. I was hooked from that point on and I don't even think like blown away like really does it like justification. It was like almost kind of like a religious experience. You know how like people talk about art in the sense like something so fundamentally like changes in their brain after experiencing certain types of art. That's kind of what happened with me. Like there was no going back to like just watching normal stuff and enjoying normal stuff from that point on. Like I do it. Like I enjoy like fun action films and stuff like that, but there's always a part of me that's just like, "Oh man, I'm getting a little bored." Like I can
Nothing
only
else is like a David Lynch movie. There's nothing even approaches it. It's its own unique world. Um,
yeah.
it's been a real privilege watching this man develop as I was developing intellectually going through college, watching Blue Velvet early in college, and then a few years later comes Twin Peaks, and then his later magnificent Los Angeles trilogy, Lost Highway, Mulholland Drive, and Inland Empire. I'm a huge fan of all three of those films. And then the Twin Peaks reboot I thought was spectacular. I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah, well, that basically been like as soon as I watched Twin Peaks was kind of like my first exposure to David Lynch, and then after that episode, I was like, okay, I got to watch everything this guy ever did. Like I have to.
Everything is good. Everything he's done. Even that simple film, The Straight Story, which was kind of an anti-Lynch film. It's almost like a joke that he's making. Oh, look, it's a G-rated David Lynch movie. How is that even possible? Well, come and watch. It's a simple, straight story. No astral plane stuff. I thought that was
Yeah.
funny. It was kind of like a joke.
Yeah, I actually quite like, yeah, I quite enjoy that film. But then there's like episode that I'm thinking about, oh, I see it's rated
I'm
G,
sure
so
he
it's
thought
like,
it was funny in his head putting out a G-rated movie. I'm sure
yeah.
he was like, nobody's going to believe that I made a G-rated film. And the
So
performances are really good of Harry Dean Stanton, who is in Firewalk with Me, and the other guy. I've forgotten the old actor guy. Might be his last performance. He had been around for a long, long time in cinema. His name is slipping me. Uh, but yeah, and Harry Dean Stanton is brought back too, as I recall, in the third. season of Twin Peaks.
Yes, yes, his
I like that
character.
guy a lot. He's just a great character actor. He's always good. Um, Excellent.
Yeah, and from my understanding, he's very well respected in Hollywood, just in
Oh yeah,
general.
yeah.
Um,
You can rely on him. He's to just play that guy, play the quirky, weird guy. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, he's so good. I
yeah,
remember
he's
first seeing him. I think it was in Alien, where he plays Brett, and then also in Escape from New York, where he plays Brain. Similar names. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. John Carpenter's wonderful Escape from New York.
well, Harry Dean Stanton, he's in this film, and Alien is one of my favorite films too, right? So
Yeah,
like
mine too. Mine too.
I've always everything he's ever been in, I'm not gonna sit here and say like I've followed his career. He's like he's done so many things like
Yeah,
as like a side character, but everything I've ever seen him in, I've always enjoyed him in it. Um, so I guess just to kind of a little bit of background to the film, Twin Peaks, the first two seasons aired on ABC, and ABC had decided that they were going to cancel the show after the second season, saying the cost of its production wasn't justified by the ratings, and it was justified by the ratings it was bringing in. And to be honest with you, that second season,
it,
after they,
it's iffy. There's some problems with it because Lynch walked away from it and just left it to Mark Frost to do all the writing, and you can tell Frost is no genius. I looked up his creds, just a hack, just a hack. And that was the problem. After they solved the crime, after what is it, 7 episodes in, 7 or 8, then the show starts going downhill because it loses dramatic tension and it just starts to dissipate its energies. And then when they bring Lynch back to direct the final episode, it recovers a bit. The last episode is pretty good because Lynch is back on board. But he's absent for that whole, from episode 8 to 2021, and there's 22 episodes there. It does start getting iffy.
yeah, well, it's from everything that I read, David did not want to reveal who the killer was of Laura Palmer. And the studio was like, "What are you crazy?" It's like, no, we have to reveal the killer.
Instincts were correct. He should not have revealed that, at least not until that 22nd episode. Shouldn't have been that early, 7 episodes in.
Yeah, the timing was a little weird, but I mean, if he hadn't revealed who the killer was, we wouldn't have had this film.
Yep.
Maybe we would have had like a more linear
I
TV
think they might have.
show.
I seem to recall there was some anxiety about that they were afraid they were losing their audience. So
Yeah.
they moved it up earlier to reveal the killer for ratings. And I think this must have been ABC before it was owned by Disney, right? Well, which
Yeah.
is a family network now, so there's no possible way Twin Peaks could ever happen on today's ABC. So I find that amusing.
So basically the show got canceled. David was not he wasn't very happy with the direction that the second season took, and him and Mark Frost kind of had a falling out. And from David's perspective, I get it because I I don't know. There's like a big thing in the Twin Peaks community. It's like, oh, Mark Frost is so much more important to Twin Peaks than people realize. And I don't know like the intricacies of their relationship, but everything that I have enjoyed about Twin Peaks is it's got David Lynch's staple all over it.
Oh yeah, I think the difference is I Frost wrote a couple of Twin Peaks novels. I did not read them, but I read detailed synopses of them. And the problem is that he wants to solve everything. He wants to make everything clear, and that's not what the whole point of it is. The point of Twin Peaks is precisely its semiotic evasiveness. Lynch is always one step ahead of you with his intuition. He is sort of unconcealing into this clearing these characters who themselves have come out of various abysses, and they trail clouds of abysses with them where they go. There's a lot of uncertainty, semiotic unclarity, and there's a lot going on in the viewer's mind, consequently, as a result, wondering about all these ambiguities. It's like the difference between Stanley Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke's 2001, A Space Odyssey. It's the exact same dichotomy between these two artists. Clarke is a hack who wants to explain everything rationally. Kubrick knows better than that. You don't give away the secrets. That's why it's a great work of art when it's semiotically evasive, that means there'll be a lot of good cultural criticism trying to trace down those signifiers and find out what they mean. Then you read the sequels to 2001, which are written exclusively by Clarke, and he explains everything away. Oh, the monolith, he says, is a teaching device that's designed by the aliens specifically to teach human beings how to become civilized. Well, see, you're explaining away the ambiguity. And when you explain the ambiguities away, you think you're making things nice and clear like a detective story. You walk away from a good detective story feeling satisfied. Oh, there were all the clues the whole time. But with genius minds like Kubrick or Lynch, they understand the value of ambiguity. What makes a work of art great is precisely those darknesses, those difficult areas of meaning where we're not sure what does that monolith mean. Please do not explain it to us because we instinctively understand, our nervous systems understand that it represents some sort of higher power. Whether it's alien or angels or what have you, doesn't matter. That's up to the viewer. So that's the problem with Frost, trying to explain everything away.
Yeah, I just for fans that like try to say like the books are canon or they're part of like they're not. David said I haven't even read the book, so
Well, of
I
course,
mean it's just
why would he bother?
like so that's enough said, right? If David's like I haven't even read these books, he's like whatever. I don't know, maybe he might take some stuff away from them. I don't know if we ever get a season four, which
This
is
was, I think this was what later transpired with all of these kinds of TV shows, using that word loosely because I know it transitions into the cable shows with The Walking Dead. What that was on AMC, right? What eventually transpires is you get the creative genius is called the showrunner, right? So, like David Milch with Deadwood. So he's in
yeah.
charge. He's the genius, in other words, who's in charge of the entire vision. They map out, you're going to have 10 episodes, let's say, and here's the loose plot structure for each episode, but it's too much work to write the scripts for Milch to write all 10 of those scripts. It's too much work. So you have to hire writers who come in, who then read the summary that Milch has outlined, and then they come in and fill in the dialogue. They do all the groundwork. That's not genius. That's just hack work. You're just hired
Yeah.
to fill in dialogue for a genius's vision. And that's what this should have been. The second season of Twin Peaks, it should have been, here's Lynch's baby and you follow his diagram. But I think either Lynch withdrew and lost interest, and so Mark Frost comes in, and now he pretends he's in charge of this thing, and he's not. It falls flat. So it should have been closer to the what later is now called the showrunner.
Yeah, so the final episode of the second season kind of we're not going to get into all the details, but it ends on a cliffhanger with our hero Dale Cooper being possessed by an evil spirit of some sort and it he smashes his head against the glass and he's saying, where's Annie? Where's Annie? So when the film was announced, people just assumed, okay, yeah, we're going to get some kind of conclusion to what happened at the end of the second season. And from what I've read, from my understanding, David had an agreement with a French film company for $75 million or whatever. There was going to be three Twin Peaks films. I don't know how much of that's actually true or not. I think maybe they might have just agreed to the one and we'll see how it goes. And
And it flopped at the box office, right? I believe.
oh yeah, it was a huge flop, both like commercially and critically.
Yeah.
David decided to
I will
go.
say, though I had seen the two seasons and liked Twin Peaks, when I went to go see Firewalk with Me, I did not like it. That was my initial take on it. Until many years later, I decided to go back and redo that process. And then the film just clicked. And I was like, no, this is a great film. Everybody missed this. It is one of Lynch's best films. Absolutely.
Yeah, so like David decided he was going to drag the story back to its origins, right? He was going to do a prequel. And people are like, "Oh, well that's an interesting thing to do considering how the second season ended, David." But what I think was what David wanted to do was because this after they had solved Laura Palmer's murder, the second season like basically drifted away. Like they weren't talking about Laura, and David wanted to drag the whole thing back to what the whole story was about Laura Palmer and what happened to her. So this was him like kind of readjusting the story the best way he could, uh, and bringing the focus back to Laura Palmer, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's all
So I
about Laura
guess,
Palmer, although the third season breaks new ground and it almost wants to, with the third season, he's developed so much as an artist in between. I think it was 2017 when it came out. Um, the show is only peripherally about the town of Twin Peaks at that point. It's about all these other things. It's lots of scenes in New York and different cities. It's all over the place and sort of salt and peppers scenes from Twin Peaks in just because it's supposed to be connected to Twin Peaks. But he's outgrown Twin Peaks by that point, and he wants to take us into the other portions of the astral plane, you might say, which I thought was just spectacular writing.
yeah, I mean, as we go through this film, we're probably going to end up talking about third season a bit. I'm the same with you. I really love the third season. It still at the core of like the third season is, who's the main focus? Well, I mean, it's Dale Cooper, but I mean, what starts the whole thing? It's Laura and her murder, right? Like that's what everything emanates from that. I mean, and years later, they re-aired the Twin Peaks TV show. I think it was on Bravo, and it was after this movie came out. David wrote a bunch of intros with the log lady for each episode, and I believe if I'm remembering correctly, the very first intro that he wrote with the log lady was like, from one comes many, and her name's like Laura Palmer. I can't remember exactly the wording that David wrote and what the log lady used, but that was him. Like, it starts here and then it goes off from this point on. What happened to Laura is
Her
what
name has
emanates.
her name has two trees in it, the laurel tree and the palm tree. That's really interesting, the connection with the trees. He's got this twin motif that keeps going through. Laura is twinned with Donna. So you get the classic blonde and brunette archetype setting off each other, like in Marilyn Monroe's film Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. She's the blonde, and then I've forgotten who plays the brunette there, but they go back and forth, and she's the ditzy blonde, and the brunette is always solving her problems for her. That later then becomes Three's Company, where we get with Janet, the brunette, who's smarter than the blonde, and always solving her problems for her. So it's an archetypal opposition there. You've got the Twin Peaks right in the title. We have the Twin Peaks, which is a very, very ancient mythological archetype. Originally back in Sumer, the idea of the Twin Peaks was the sun god every morning uses a saw to saw open the earth so that he can then come out of it between two peaks. And in Egypt, these two peaks become the pylons. You have a pylon as you're walking down the central colonnade of a temple. There's two pylons, two pylons, two pylons. Those are twin peaks from out of the cleft between which the sun is born. So we've got that motif with the twin peaks. There's one mountain on the western side and a mountain on the eastern side. The eastern side of the Columbia River that's going through them, the town is near. The eastern side is associated with industry, with the logging world, the logging operation of the Horn family, transforming trees into profit and capitalism, whereas the west is associated with the dead. The west is the spooky world, the astral world of ghosts and the ghost woods, as he calls it, and so forth. So there's always a difference engine that he sets up these oppositions. In the third season, we get the two Dale Coopers, the evil Dale Cooper and the good dumb Dale Cooper. That is absolutely brilliant writing. And also, I would say Kyle MacLachlan's best performance as an actor was doing that. Those twins, especially the evil twin guy, he was amazing. Because Kyle MacLachlan is usually cast as the nice guy, the sweetheart guy that women love. Oh, this guy's so sweet, and then Lynch casts him contrary to his type to play the evil Dale Cooper, and it's brilliant. One of his best performances, absolutely. Yeah. That third season really depends on Kyle MacLachlan's performance, and he really carries it. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll get into I guess we should start talking about the actual film itself, but Twin Peaks kind of Fire Walk with Me. I guess it breaks into like a couple of acts, but the two main acts is the Deer Meadow prologue, and then we cut to Laura Palmer's final 7 days uh before she's murdered. So I guess we'll start with like kind of act one. And I'll give like a quick rundown. In 1988, in the small town of Deer Meadow, Washington, teenage drifter Teresa Banks' body floats down a river wrapped in plastic. FBI Chief Gordon Cole sends Agent Chester Desmond and Sam Stanley to investigate. While examining Teresa's body, the agents notice that a ring is missing from her finger, and they find a small piece of paper with a letter T inserted under the fingernail. A local waitress tells them that Teresa's arm went numb before she died. At Teresa's trailer, Desmond notices a photo of her wearing a strange ring, which makes a return in it's like a green ring with the petroglyph on it. Makes a return in the third season. This was not in the initial run of the TV show, so this is David's adding something new here. At dusk, Desmond finds the ring and a mound of dirt under a trailer. He reaches out to take it, and then he just disappears. We never see him again. Uh, at FBI headquarters in Philadelphia, Agent Dale Cooper tells Cole of the forbidding dream that he had. A long lost colleague, Philip Jeffries, materializes and insanely rants about a meeting he witnessed involving mysterious witnesses above a convenience store. And Bob is there, the dwarf is there, Mrs. Chalfont and her grandson are there, and Albert Rosenfield reports that Jeffries was just never here. He just disappears, and that's that. Uh, which, which is one of the more bizarre scenes that Twin Peaks ever did. I think it's one of the best things that David Lynch ever did, to be honest with you. And yeah, that's
David Bowie plays Philip Jeffries. He's not there very long, but it's fun to see him.
oh yeah, for sure. And yeah, Dale Cooper goes to Deer Meadow and he learns nothing really other than he sees like a car that's got it's either it's spray painted or it's like almost looks like red lipstick that says "Let's Rock," which is a callback to a saying that's in the TV run of the show. What do you think of this whole prologue thing?
I like it. I initially did not like it. Like there were a few things that turned me off at first, like the weird lady in the red dress who comes out with a sour face. And it's like,
Yeah.
how is this going on here? It just seems to be weirdness for the sake of weirdness. But it took me a while to adjust to it. I like it now. I initially felt the prologue was very off-putting and difficult to get into. The film finally settles down then in the subsequent acts, but it's a little strange, the prologue. It's a little strange.
Well,
But it's
initially,
Lynch, so that's not really a fair complaint to say of a Lynch screenplay. We like
well,
his.
initially, like Dale, like Kyle MacLachlan, the character of Chet Desmond was supposed to be Dale Cooper, but Kyle MacLachlan didn't. There's a couple of things. Like he didn't like what the course that the second season went in, and he was also afraid of being typecast as like the goody two shoes, like FBI agent, right? So he said he'd be in the film, but he wanted a reduced role, right? So I think he was only available for 6 days or something like that. So David had to basically create this Chet Desmond character um to replace him, like
This
for
is
this
the guy
role.
played by Chris Isaac, right?
Yeah,
You know, his
which is
acting. My only complaint about that, he's not that good of an actor. It's just there's his performance is kind of lackluster. I would have preferred somebody else who could act better.
it's interesting when I think about it and when I knowing that now, and I have a whole theory about this whole beginning prologue thing and how season three went, especially like that final episode where Dale wakes up in episode 18 and it says Richard. Now, I have this is my theory. I think the idea was they were going to have Dale Cooper play Chet Desmond. He was just going to be called Chet Desmond. No one was going to refer to him as Dale Cooper. And this whole kind of beginning part was like a dream. Like this, none of this actually really happened. And what do you, I don't know, what do you think of that?
That it was a dream.
Yeah.
In a way, it doesn't matter because, as I just started out by saying with our opening cosmology about the astral plane, when you're asleep, you're in the astral plane anyway. So saying
Yeah.
a dream, it's a dream, it is a dream. The astral plane is the dream world where we go and things are weird and we have all kinds of weird adventures. So it doesn't really solve anything by saying it's a dream.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because people were like kind of really off put by that, like that last episode. It's like, well, who's Richard, right? But it would have made him. I think if the Dale Cooper had played Chet Desmond and people were referring to him as Chet Desmond, it would have set up that ending a little bit better. It's like, well, it's Dale Cooper. He's just a different person in this part of the dreamscape or something like that. And there's just like there's a couple of examples to like kind of make like when they're talking to Harry Dean Stanton's character and you know Sam Stanley says like he takes a sip of the coffee. He's like, "Oh yeah, we need a good wake me up." And then he repeats it, "Oh, we need a good wake me up, don't we?" And
I
then there's
wondered about that. If that looked to me for a second like Chris Isaac forgot, or Kiefer Sutherland forgot his line. One or the other, it seemed like they forgot the line, so he repeated it. And Lynch said, let's leave that in. That's kind of what it feels like to me. It felt like a mistake that Lynch left in because he thought it was funny.
But like even like all of like the Deer Meadows stuff, it's like Deer Meadows is supposed to be like the anti Twin Peaks. Like it's dirty, it's poor. Like
White trash, trailer
it's
park.
white trash, right? Like the FBI agents show up to the police station, and unlike Twin Peaks, they're not helpful at all. If anything, like they're making it more difficult for them to investigate this murder. And then there's the scene at the diner where they're talking to the waitress who's supposed to be like I guess the anti Norma, who's from the original TV show. Norma's this,
Good way of putting it. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but yeah, she's like the anti-Norma.
like so Norma's like this beautiful, like friendly, girl, and you want to go to the Double R to eat because it just seems like a nice place. This is the last place you want to eat. Like she's smoking a cigarette and it looks like it's going to be dropping in people's food. But then there's like a scene where there's another patron at the restaurant and is it are you talking about that little girl that was murdered? And then there's like kind of and Chet Desmond asks, well, do you know anything? And he's like, well, I don't know anything. And then he asks again, are you talking about that little
He
girl that
repeats
got
it again.
murdered?
He repeats it again. There's like this, it's the twin motif archetype that is structuring Lynch's thoughts as he's creating these narratives. He likes things to appear in pairs. Even when people say things, he likes parallel realities.
I just to me like I take a couple of these things and they kind of add up and it's like I think David is hinting at us. It's like, well, not everything is a not like things don't appear exactly the way they are. Like I think he's hinting that like this isn't actually happening in like the real world and that we understand it, right? Like the people repeating themselves, people talking about waking up. Carl even talks about he's like, I've been to places. He also mentions like, oh yeah, it's okay that you woke me up. I was having a bad dream anyways.
That's right.
You um, there's just this couple of things where I think, and this isn't entirely my theory. I believe there was a guy who really got me thinking about this. He wrote the theory. I think it was for Twin Peaks, like wrapped in plastic or something like that. I can't remember who actually came up with this theory that this entire Deer Meadow sequence is kind of it's not really happening. Uh, So that's just a little thing that I personally I really enjoy this sequence. I like Chet Desmond. That's one of I think it's one of the failings of the third season is they don't really I think they make a mention that Chet Desmond is still missing, but I really would have liked some kind of explanation for what happened, exactly what happened to him. Uh there's a mention of Sam Stanley, I believe, in the third season. It's like a throwaway line where it's like he became like an alcoholic or something like that after what happened with Chet Desmond and the Teresa Banks murder. He basically went insane. Uh, and people say like, well, if you actually listen to the first season closely, they do mention, sorry, Sam Stanley. They do mention him too. Sorry, I got that confused. Sam Stanley's the one that went insane and became like a drunk or whatever. They mentioned in the first, I believe it's in the first episode, Sam
Sam
Stanley is,
Stanley is the Kiefer Sutherland character.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they do mention him. So this isn't just like just a totally new character. They mention and they talk about Teresa Banks' murder in the first season too, right? So this all ties back into the first season of Twin Peaks. And I guess like probably the most infamous part of this whole prologue is the Philip Jeffries sequence that we talked about. And how brilliantly shot is that with Dale talking to Cole about having, he's worried about a dream that he had. And he's going back and forth, because I guess in the dream, like he gets freeze framed in the cameras. And Philip Jeffries just walks in and just starts screaming and yelling. And then it cuts to I guess the meeting that he saw above the convenience store, right? Where Bob is talking to the dwarf who's, it almost seems like he's explaining to these other spirits, like green is its color. Like it almost seems like he's like explaining how our world works to a degree, if that makes any sense. So like there's just a little tidbit. There's actually a hole in the table of the Formica table that's green, obviously. And I assume that's what the ring was built with. Yeah, it's just a little thing that like, but it's there, and I'm assuming that's the green ring that Teresa Banks had worn, and then we're going to be talking about later as the series as we go through the film. I don't know, what's your opinion on that whole sequence?
Uh, you mean the whole prologue sequence?
Yeah.
It's like 20 minutes. Yeah, it's excellent. I like it a lot. Like I say, initially I didn't. It took me a while to warm up to it, to get used to it. But yeah, it's great. A lot of great stuff.
Well, and it's
The dwarf. I love the way he talks. That's really cool. That whole creepy red room scene. I really like all of that.
yeah, and it, I think, and then there's like Philip Jeffries, like when it cuts in between like him like ranting and raving and the FBI, uh, Brill and FBI building and the convenience store scene, and it's like you almost get the impression that like we're we're seeing what Philip Jeffries is talking about, but like what Gordon and Dale are seeing is just a guy that's been missing for 2 years, just comes back and starts ranting and raving about like stuff that they have no idea what he's talking about. It's very unnerving. It's actually it's pretty scary. And Philip Jeffries says like we live inside a dream. And I think that's like David kind of giving us like a pretty big hint. We're this is like we all live inside a dream, right? And he does this again in season 3 with Dale Cooper's character. I believe it's episode 17, where like his face is superimposed, and Dale Cooper's character also says like we live inside a dream. So
Which is
I,
true
I
from a certain point of view, because in the the New Age cosmology that I sort of put together, our higher selves remain behind in the astral world there, and they go sort of dormant, and then they dream our lifetime into being. So our lives on the physical plane are the dreams of our higher self on the other side, dreaming us up and imagining what this lifetime would be like. So it depends on what's a dream and what isn't. It depends on where you want to put the emphasis. Because when you're asleep and your astral body is in the astral plane, you think that's the real, genuine existence. And this waking existence is the dream world. This is the real world over here, the astral plane, which is guided entirely by thought. They don't have physical heavy matter to move around. It's all thought. Thought moves things over there. And the reality is very soft and pliable. As everyone knows from their dreams, it's constantly metamorphosing. But the reason for the metamorphoses is because all the beings over there are having thoughts that exteriorize into this sort of almost virtual reality. This physical world is the dream. So yeah, it's true from a certain point of view that this is like it's a dream that some other beings are having, all of us.
yeah. And then David introduces this Judy character who ends up playing like a much bigger role in the third season. Uh Now, like, I can understand, like, kind of like Twin Peaks fans, like, watching this whole prologue and then, like, David introduces all these new things. It's like all of a sudden there's this ring and there's the Blue Rose Task Force and there's this Philip Jeffries character and he's talking about Judy, but we're not going to talk about Judy at all. I can understand like initially Twin Peaks
There's a
fans
lot
going
there
like,
in that prologue that he never explains, which is why it
yeah.
works so well, because the viewer will make their own semiotic connections. That's why it works so well. There's Lynch is a genius writer and filmmaker, understands it's not necessary to explain what everything is, especially coming from his uh, worldview, which is coming out of surrealism, out of the sort of Dali-esque world of surrealism. That's sort of his genre. It's a surrealist type of world with him. In that world, things do not need to be explained. When you're looking at a Dali painting and he's painted a piano on a seashore, the painting works just fine. We don't need to know why the piano is there on the seashore. That's not the artist's job to explain that. It's us to wonder. It's our job to wonder about that. Why does he have a piano on the beach there? And leave that mystery there because that's what makes it so attractive. Bad writers are ones who just explain everything away, explain everything away. That's fine if the genre is mystery, the sleuth genre, the detective genre, where you do want things explained. That's for that genre. In the surrealist genre, things are better left unexplained.
Yeah, that's what I've always told people in terms of David Lynch's stuff is don't so much try to understand it. I mean, that's how, kind of the fun is trying to figure out like exactly what David's saying. Like that's why people can watch a David Lynch film and 25 years later they're still talking about it. Like that's what people were doing with Twin Peaks. Like that's part of the fun. It's almost you just kind of go with how you feel in that moment while you're watching it unfold and kind of go with your feelings more so. And like think about it in terms of like you're watching somebody trying to bring the dream world and put it on screen. Like try to make a dream real life is the best way is how I describe David's work to people. And sometimes like when you explain it like that to them, then they something clicks and they kind of get it. And then there's other people it's just like I don't care to put that much effort into it.
Sure. Yeah. There's a great
Uh
degree of participation on the part of the viewer with the David Lynch film. He invites you to fill in the missing pieces. So it's very high participation on the part of the viewer with his stuff.
so then it cuts to pretty drastically the classic Twin Peaks like music and this is kind of act two, right? This is
Yeah.
Laura Palmer's story and
We get the
it's
music,
literally
the Twin Peaks music, dreamlike music. And recall too on that opening of the show for a second, it shows a bird. And that's interesting because then it shows flowing water from the river. Um, those two motifs are what Gene Gebser calls the soul's death pole and the soul's life pole. The death pole is always symbolized by birds and winged beings like angels, harpies. Uh, Anything that's winged is a symbol of the death pole. Anything that has to do with water is the soul's life pole. It's life pole, flowing water, animation. So we already there, whether Lynch knows it or not, he's already introducing us to two archetypes that the show is going to be about, the life and death poles of the soul. This is not the concrete world, let's say the hard-bitten detective world where everything is very, you can figure everything out and understand it clearly. This is the surreal astral dream world where things aren't so clear. When you're reading Finnegan's Wake, for instance, it's very hard to understand because Joyce takes us into a man's dream. He's asleep and dreaming, just as Vishnu is asleep and dreaming the dream of the world, space and time and causality, Maya, in other words. That's Vishnu's dream. That's Finnegan's dream as he's asleep and dreaming. And Joyce deliberately obscures the prose so that it's very difficult to read and understand. And as you're reading it, it, it fades in and out for understanding what's going on, just like a dream. In other words, that's just like a dream. He wants it to fade in and out. He wants it to be that you don't get everything perfectly clear because it's a dream world. It's full of ambiguities. And dreams are made of a different kind of matter. It's called subtle matter. what the Indians called sukshma, subtle matter, as opposed to the gross or physical matter, which they call stula. Stula is gross matter, physical matter governed by the law of causality and illuminated from without by either the sun or fire or what have you. Whereas the dream material, which will be then the same material that the astral plane is made out of, sukshma material, is self-luminous. It radiates its own internal light, like bioluminescent fish at the bottom of the sea, and it changes form rapidly. It is not governed by the laws of causality of the physical world. So the sukshma matter, the self-luminous matter, is the matter that dreams and myths and the astral plane are all made up out of. And that's what Lynch is doing, bringing us into that sukshma world of things that radiate their own weird, eerie, glowing light. And there's a lot of weird, eerie, glowing light all through this film.
Well, yeah. Well, I would say like that just that opening, like when the music turns on and you see Laura Palmer walking, and it's like, Bobby says something. It's like, oh, Laura Palmer or whatever. It's literally like that. Those couple of minutes there is about pretty much the only lightness that you get in this entire film. And it was one of the criticisms of the film when it came out was there's none of that quirkiness that, I mean, you get a little bit of it in the
The
prologue.
small town quirkiness, yeah, that's sort of missing from the film, but it's a 2 hour movie. So, you got to stick to pretty much one character there. With a TV show, you have a sprawling canvas with lots of characters, and all the characters in Twin Peaks are types. They are stereotypes, archetypes, iconotypes. The Like you said with the waitress, the nasty waitress is a type we're familiar with. So is the beautiful, nice, attractive, seductive waitress. That's also another type. Dale Cooper is the type of the detective sleuth who wants to shed rationality and reason on all of this mystery, this world that's surreal and completely resistant to being solved by the rational intellect. Dale Cooper is like a walking spotlight, trying to shine light into the abysses that are haunting this town. Everywhere he turns, there's another abyss. The Black Lodge, for instance, that he goes into, that's another abyss. So the world is of this town is being invaded by these astral forces from all directions. They're invading people's psyches, and they're also invading the town itself. Um, so yeah, everybody you encounter is a type. The truck driver type Leo, who beats his wife, who's a victim type. Everything's a type.
Yeah. And I also think it was consciously like David was was making like 100% sure. It's like you guys might have loved all that quirkiness and like kind of the light stuff that
There
happened in
are
the first
scenes,
season.
as I recall, there you can get a bunch of other scenes where he filmed the guy whose wife wears the patch. He's in a scene. Um, I recall there are several scenes that you can pull up and watch that he was thinking of putting in there that would have widened it to include some of these quirky townspeople. I think he wisely left those scenes out and just focused. This is a different narrative. It's Twin Peaks in a narrow cast, a narrow scope, just on Laura as the protagonist, and everything in the narrative surrounds her and revolves around her. You might even say it revolves around what's between her legs, because that is the primary basin of attraction, you might say, in chaos theory that draws all these men around her as though she were the queen bee, and there are all these drones, and they're just hovering around her, including the father and Bobby and James. They all want her sexually. And then she turns into like a black hole. That abyss between her legs becomes a huge vortex that pulls everyone down into it. Ronette Pulaski and Donna as well. She's a walking abyss, is what she is. And so it was wise to just focus on her. It was a good writing decision, I think.
Well, and it's also, I think he wanted to really focus on like the whole reason Twin Peaks exists is this absolutely horrific story of Laura Palmer, like leading up to her murder. Like Dale Cooper, like coming into the town, like this wouldn't have happened unless this absolutely horrific things that happened to Laura. Um, like if these things didn't happen, then Twin Peaks wouldn't exist. Like it's built on this her like her horrific life, really. And I the
Sort of.
as we get as we get like further along in the podcast or whatever, like I have a whole theory about the entire show, basically. Like first season up until they solve her murder, and then the third season in this film that in my brain, I think it makes sense. It's the one I find most satisfying. But
There are
yeah,
really,
so
Lynch is using these very well-known genres, like the noir genre, the detective genre, and the horror genre. He's using them, uh, and he knows what the rules of the genres are. For instance, the rule of the detective mystery genre is you start with a dead body, Laura Palmer. So you got a corpse. You bring in your detective guy, Dale Cooper in this case, or Sherlock Holmes, or whoever proposed character that he invents, to then go back and reanimate, finding clues so that once he reaches the end of the narrative, then he can go back and rewind everything to tell you what led to that corpse happening. Oh, she was with this guy and that guy. She got into trouble here, and this is why she ended up where she did. And that's a satisfying way to tell a detective story. But with Fire Walk with Me, he turns it the other way around. He turns that upside down so that now we see all the events because we know where it's going to end up. We know exactly how it's going to end. So there's no mystery there. What the brilliance of it is, the things that he introduces along the way, along her path to into the abyss, all these very fascinating things happen around her, all these spooky ghosts and spirits and weird portals opening to other worlds, like that picture that she hangs on her wall with the door in it, and the painting that changes when an angel disappears from it. Reality here is dreamlike. It's very slippery. It metamorphoses without warning, just as your realities do in the dream world, the astral world.
well, I mean, very like the opening shot, like it's pretty much as soon as that music's done, we know that we're not in Twin Peaks anymore. Like it's like the first shot is like we see Laura doing cocaine, right? And she's sleeping with James Hurley. We know that from the TV show. So like she's cheating on Bobby, who's supposed to be her boyfriend.
And she's also
And
prostituting herself with the Jacques guy as a kind of pimp for her.
yeah,
She's prostituting herself with these men. So she's a fallen angel for sure. There's nothing innocent about her.
yeah. And it's, like she probably, I would say like probably like the scene that really exemplifies the kind of opening sequence is the conversation she has with her best friend Donna. And Donna says, "Do you think that if you were falling in space, that you would slow down after a while or go faster and faster?" And Laura, and it's just this beautiful shot that David is just focusing right on Cheryl Lee's face, and she says faster and faster, and for a long time you wouldn't feel anything, and then you burst into fire forever, and the angels wouldn't help you because they've all gone away, and it just hit like that scene just hits me in the gut so hard because here's this poor girl, she's crying out for help, and it, she can't really explain what's going on with her to anybody because no one's really going to understand. Like everybody knows that there's something wrong with Laura, but nobody knows just how bad it is that what's going on with Laura.
She's been being molested by her father routinely, whom she personifies as Bob, I guess, in order to protect herself. She imagines
Yeah.
she imagines it, Leland, as this demonic entity, Bob. There is a sex scene where she's in bed and Bob is raping her, and then she sees the father's face, and it's like she finally realizes that the whole time she's been projecting Bob onto her father to protect herself, I suppose, from the reality that her daughter is the daughter's having sex with her father, and that's a night. It becomes a complete nightmare. But uh, there's always Lynch's wonderful semiotic ambiguity because we don't know for sure if that's the case, if Bob is her projection, or alternatively, if Bob is a demon being from the astral plane who is possessing her father. That seems to be more likely to me, that the father has been invaded by an astral spirit that's causing him to do this. And she's picking up on it. She's not projecting Bob. She's intuiting that there's a demon being inside my father. And that's a horrific thing for anyone to realize. It's awful.
Yeah, that's always been the big debate about this film in general and Twin Peaks in general is like how much did Leland know what he was doing?
Yeah.
And then there's like a scene where there's a scene with Laura comes home and they're at Leland's at the dinner table and he's asking Laura about her necklace, like, "Oh, did your lover give you this?" And he's like, "Look at the dirt underneath your fingernails." And to be honest, like, there's not like a ton going on, but like the way Ray Wise gives the performance and Cheryl Lee's performance, you could tell like this is something that's been going on forever. This type of like psychological abuse that's going on. And Sarah Palmer, Laura's mother, she's freaking out, telling Leland, like, just stop it. Like, what are you doing? Just stop it. Just stop it. And, she doesn't like that. And there's just the shot of Leland, turns right to Sarah Palmer and says, well, what do you know what she likes? Which is just so like, it's so horrific. It's so disgusting because it's obviously like a sexual reference of what's going on here.
Father, it does seem like the father has two sides to him. He has the normal side at the dinner table when he appears like a normal father in a normal role, but then in other scenes, he looks possessed. He looks possessed. Like in the end, the whole end sequence, this is clearly not a family man. So some demon is riding this guy. Um,
And well, like later on in that, like just a few seconds later, like you see like that intense like evil face that he has, and this is Ray Wise's performance is just so brilliant. You
he's a good
slowly
actor.
see it
He's a good.
soften up, and he goes into Laura's room and says, he goes, "I love you so much." And Laura just doesn't like she doesn't know how to react, right? Because she's been having to deal with this type of abuse her entire life. And it's like you can go back and forth with it. Is like is this like the real Leland coming out of like is this the real Leland that we're seeing here? Like there's a moment where like he's able to
He
fight
does
off this.
love his daughter in a normal father-daughter way. Yeah, it does seem like that, and then it flips into the demonic father.
See that now, see, I there's a part of me that kind of like, interprets it in the sense of like this is Leland just kind of gaslighting her,
Hmm.
like this is like well, we'll get to the end and then I'll explain my whole takeaway from this and you'll probably like I know for a fact you're just gonna disagree with it because what you were
Oh, well,
saying
that's why
earlier.
we're here to disagree.
Yeah.
The movies. That's what. In my film class, I have my sidekick there is Josh Hicks, not sidekick, but like a Siskel and Ebert thing. So we get together
Yeah.
and we arrange. He gives a presentation, and then I give my counter commentary to it. And usually we're pretty harmonious, but we had a blow up a couple of sessions back that left everyone's mouths like, what just happened with these two? Where we really disagreed over a movie. It was Quentin Tarantino's film, the one about Kill Bill. No, the one about the Nazis,
Oh,
Inglorious Bastards.
Inglorious.
I love every Tarantino film, but I motherfucking hate that movie. It's really an insult to my intelligence for me to believe this, that these Nazis are cardboard cutout stereotypes from Raiders of the Lost Ark. No, we happen to know that we've already got Schindler's List. We've already seen that they were normal people caught up in a very abnormal situation. That stereotype of the Nazi cardboard cutout is no longer workable in cinema. It has to be tossed out. Schindler killed it. So that's the reason I hate the film. But Josh loves it. He thinks it's a masterpiece. So we went back and forth, and we were really going at each other. So, but it was fun. The guy, there's a kid who attends every class. He steps up and he says, "That was the best 20 minutes I've ever heard so far from you guys. That was just awesome." So disagreements, people. I remember growing up watching Siskel and Ebert. You waited for them to disagree because that's what made the show so great was how vicious they were when they disagreed, and they always disagreed on every show. Maybe not over every film, but they were rarely in sync. But that's what made that show so watchable, the tension there. And I remember the copycat shows. I've forgotten what they're called. Maybe one was called At the Movies, where they'll bring in two critics. I think one was Rex Reed and then some other critic. And it never worked because they were afraid to fight with each other. It never worked. One by one, each of those shows failed because they couldn't get the chemistry that Siskel and Ebert have, this hateful relationship, this I won't even call it love hate because I don't think there was any love between them. Those two guys thoroughly disliked each other. That's what made it so good and why nobody could replicate it because they're afraid to get two people who will go at each other's throats. That's why that show worked, why it lived so long.
Well, I mean, I'll lay it out. Like I personally, I think this whole all of Twin Peaks, and I think all of Twin Peaks is just Laura Palmer's dream. I truly do. And it's moments where she's dreaming this entire world, but in the real world, what's going on is she's being molested by her father. Nobody cares. She has no one to go out. There's no one to help her. No one's listening. So she's dreaming up this world that's taking place in Twin Peaks. Like you could say whatever, maybe Twin Peaks is a real place and this is where Laura Palmer actually lives. Uh, she's dreamed up this place of Twin Peaks where there's FBI agents that are concerned about trying to solve what happened to her, her murder, right? Dale Cooper, he's this archetype of like the perfect FBI agent. He comes into town and the entire focus is on her, Bobby. Maybe Bobby was like a boyfriend she had or something that was in real life at one point, right? But like the entire focus of Twin Peaks is it's all about who Laura Palmer is, and everyone is concerned about her. But I think in reality, what was actually going on in her real life is nobody cared. And she came up with this idea. It's like, well, in her dream, how could this happen that my father would be, molesting me? And she comes up with this idea that, oh no, he's actually possessed by this Bob character, uh, from another place, this Black Lodge. Um, and at moments that we see moments where like the real life starts seeping in, right? Where like the scene at the dinner table, like I think personally, this entire film, Fire Walk with Me, is basically like her dream becoming like a nightmare. Like like she can't hold it back anymore. Like the too much of what actually is happening to her and her trauma and her abuse is seeping into her dream. And this is to me, it's all a lot of this stuff is, and then people say like, well, that like degrades like all the supernatural stuff that's going on. Not necessarily, in my opinion. I don't think it does at all. I just think it's what you're watching here is a girl that's gone through horrific abuse, and you're basically watching like her nightmare unfold inside her own head,
To me, it doesn't
and then
matter. It doesn't matter whether it's a dream or not because it's about astral energies that are
yeah,
invading her. And astral energies are precisely dream energies. That's what they are. That's where they come from.
yeah,
So you could put it that way if you want. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Um, yeah. Yeah, but
but
the thing about her is that, like you're saying, nobody cares. And I'm thinking about the character, and she's not a particularly likable person, is she? There's not much about her for the viewer to empathize with or like because she hates herself so much. She has thrown herself away. She's a walking piece of human garbage because she
yeah.
has thrown herself out and thinks that she's worthless, which is why she's doing all these sex acts for men and drugs. Apparently, that's all she's good for. So might as well just do it. And that's going to lead you nowhere. That attitude will lead you into an abyss, which is exactly what happens to her. Like happens with I think of the famous porn star Shauna Grants, whom I wrote an essay about in my book, Cultural Decay Rate, um, who was a beautiful blonde. I grew up with her. One of the first porn stars I ever sort of fell in love with a bit, blonde, beautiful. But then she's addicted to cocaine and she ends up putting a bullet through her head. For the exact same reasons here. This is the type of personality, women who act out like this, because they dislike themselves so thoroughly that how can you like such a person? Why would anybody like such a person if they don't like themselves? That's why it's so important to find love for yourself in your life. It's absolutely important because then that attracts love from other people. If you only have hatred toward yourself, you're going to attract people who will treat you accordingly as a piece of shit, because you think of yourself that way. Consequently, You attract through the law of attraction, you attract those personality types. They pick up on your frequency and they show up in your life to abuse you because you are putting out a vibe, a victim vibe that they are picking up on, a predator vibe, and there's a relationship there. It takes two to tango. It really does. Um, so her self-esteem is just disastrous. I've dated women like this. So I know exactly the type, what it's like and how they feel. I had a girlfriend who committed suicide who was kind of an amateur porn star that I dated off and on for 4 years. And she felt like she was just like Laura Palmer. The exact same thing, except she was brunette. I prefer brunettes. But so I understand the mentality. She was behaving exactly the same way before she put a bullet through her head because she was headed for that abyss because she hated herself so much. Um, so it's difficult to sympathize with her. That may be a criticism. I'm not sure. Um,
But I would say there's moments where you see where like Laura is trying, like she starts the Meal on Wheels thing.
yeah,
She's tutoring Benjamin Horne's special needs student. I mean student son. I'm blanking on his name right now. She was giving Josie Packard English lessons. So there's almost like a contrast, right? Like she literally says this too, even at one point to her friend Donna. It's like nighttime is my time. So it's like during the day she does like nice things where you can see the goodness, and then like nighttime, and it all boils down to it's like this is the way she acts is that you can really can't blame her because of what's going on in her life. It's like her dad is molesting her.
no,
And
she's having that's a rough thing for anyone to deal with. So, yeah,
and then this is why, like, for people who've gone through that type of trauma, this film, and I've read reviews, and I'm not going to get into my life, but it really it speaks for me. It's one of the first films where it's just like David gets it,
yeah. I
like
mean, in
he,
Twin Peaks, the TV show, we start off with we find this dead body of this beautiful homecoming queen or prom queen, whatever it is. Um, perfect, picture perfect on the surface. That's the whole thing. She seems on the surface the small town girl that all the boys want to be with. And then we dig and we dig and we dig, and we find out that she was nothing like that. That small town girl, innocent girl projection was just that. It had no reality to it whatsoever. So he goes back and firewalk with me to show you what a piece of shit this person was. There was nothing
yeah,
small town innocent about her, nothing whatsoever. So he takes that stereotype and gives it some depth and complexity by showing you how she really was. This was a three-dimensional person, not a walking small town stereotype like the girl in the blonde in Blue Velvet. Uh, who was that actress that plays with?
Laura Dern.
Yeah, Laura Dern.
Yeah,
She's
women.
the the archetype you think she's going to be, and Lynch says no, that it's the wrong archetype. There's a lot more going on here to her than that superficial stereotype.
Well, and the thing too is unlike almost like there's like so many like kind of police procedural shows. I get CSI is probably the most famous for this one, right? Where it's just like, oh, like some murder happens or what have you, and it's like, oh, like how are we gonna solve this? And it's whatever, that's fine for that type of thing. Like David forces us to. It's like who killed Laura Palmer? It's like almost kind of like as horrific as it is, it's almost kind of secondary. Like the question you should be asking is who was Laura Palmer? you know, and it's what
Why
Fire
was
Walk with
Laura
Me.
Palmer killed? Yeah, why exactly? He's going back and
Yeah.
analyzing that. And it's very interesting to follow her crash course that she's headed for. She's that wonderful scene in the nightclub with that awesome music that he's got playing that almost puts you into a trance, especially if you watch it at night inebriated. It puts you into a trance. You're in the same trance that they're in when they're having sexual relations in the club. Um, it's very you get drawn down into her world, and you're like, well, I can see what she was kind of having a lot of fun here doing all this stuff you're not supposed to be doing. If you're a nice small town girl, you're not supposed to be doing this stuff, prostituting yourself for other men randomly. Almost every corruption you can think of she has, the drug addiction and so forth. So it really is shocking the way he went back and explored her character. I think it's an excellent addition to the whole Twin Peaks canon.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that scene where like when she first goes into the club and I believe it's the log lady stops her before she goes into the club and says like when there's a fire like this, I'm trying to remember the exact quote. It's hard to put out. And then she goes into the club and she's sitting down the Roadhouse and Julie Cruz is singing that song and you just see her just slowly break down and start crying. Like I can't help but bawl my eyes out when I watch that sequence. There's just a part of me that's just much like Dale Cooper. Like I just want to save Laura. Like can we just save Laura? Can we stop what happened to her from becoming this type of person? I mean, I think that's one of the themes in season 3 is you can't. Um and the scene that you're talking about is like the pink room where like that super loud music is playing and you can't even hear what they're saying to each other. Like David had to put subtitles because he plays the music so loud. And like you said,
I
it
thought that was
puts
brilliant.
you,
A nice touch to put the subtitles in and have their voices drowned out because it is like that in those clubs. I've been to many of them. You can barely hear the other person that you're talking to. It's extremely annoying, in my opinion.
yeah. And it's, I guess like one of the more infamous scenes of this movie is like when Bob crawls into her room and starts having sexual relations with Laura and like the thing that makes the scene so uncomfortable, like obviously for obvious reasons, but also it's like Laura is almost kind of welcoming him in,
She does.
right? Like
Before he
she
appears,
does.
she pulls up her dress, and you're thinking, oh, is she going to masturbate now? No, she's making herself ready for her visitor. That's apparently been happening all the time.
Yeah. And then like it's going on, and then there's the shot where it switches to her dad's face, right? And this is where she can't like she had suspected it was her dad uh, through like pretty much right from the get-go, right? Like
One part of her,
there's
I think, knew that, and then, but she's with the Bob thing, she's protecting herself from that harsh reality of having to face that. I'm being raped by my father on a regular basis. Why is that happening to me? Why me? Such a person would ask, you know.
yeah, and then basically after this happens, she just completely mentally breaks down, right? Like she starts using drugs heavily
Yeah, that's
and
from that scene on, it's the downward spiral for her.
yeah, like it's just a straight up horror film from this point on. Like I'd say Fire Walk with Me is probably one of the best horror films ever made.
It is a
Uh,
horror film. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
and from this point on, it's like horror film as best as you can make it. Um, we just
It's interesting
basically
because now
watch her.
thinking about that prologue is interesting because with the prologue, though, it's not a horror film. It's a detective story. Here we got the
Yeah,
detective characters. They come in, they've got a dead body, Teresa Banks, solving a crime. So he sort of adds that in there to set up a frame. But then the moment it switches over to Twin Peaks with the music and Laura, it's as though he discards that genre. And now it's just straight up horror. It's not a sleuth detective story anymore. There are no detectives in that latter, what is it, two-thirds of the film. It's
yeah.
straight horror. It's a tale of this woman's descent into madness, prostitution, drugs, and ultimate oblivion.
Yeah, so like I guess we'll cut to her like last night or whatever. Like she's gonna go meet up with James and she does, right? But she's, high on cocaine pretty much for the entire
Yeah, he
day. She's
can't get
completely
along with her because she's so crazy, or on cocaine, like you say. She's impossible to deal with, so he dumps her from the motorcycle. Um, yeah,
but he's the one of the few people it's like because he sees the good side of Laura and he's like, I love
yes.
you, I want you to get better. And Laura's like, you don't know, like the Laura that you
James is
knew.
this sweet kid. He's modeling himself on the Marlon Brando archetype from The Wild One, who rides the motorbike and wears the black leather jacket, but he doesn't have a tough guy's heart. He's really a
Yeah.
sweetheart. James is, whereas Bobby is the other. Bobby is the James Dean character from Rebel Without a Cause. He's not quite so likable. Bobby comes across as just a wild card. You know he's headed for no good. It's going to be either death or jail for that guy. But James has a sweetheart, and so the contrast between them is really interesting because James illuminates. He does see good things about her, things that are worth loving. He thinks that she's worth loving, even though she doesn't think she's worth loving. But he sees the good in her. He sees that there's a good soul there that's gone awry. Um, so that's really interesting writing the contrast between Bobby, and it was an excellent choice to just focus on that threefold relationship there. Um,
Well, like I would argue too that Bobby did love her to a degree, but
yeah,
he
I'm sure
was
absolutely they both did.
and
Absolutely, but for totally different reasons, I think.
yeah. Well, and it's like well, I mean, where I think Bobby understood Laura better than James did. And whether
Yeah,
that was like a good thing or a bad thing, like he
right.
showed like Laura shows up to the house, like this is part of her last day. And Bobby's heartbroken because he sees how messed up Laura is, and he's like, "Oh, it's like you just want the drugs, right?" And Laura's like, "Well, it's not like I need them, right?" And Bobby's like, "It's okay, I understand, right?" And he gives her the drugs because like it's the only way that he can kind of give her any kind of comfort, right? Because like Bobby knows that there's something really messed up going on, but he doesn't know, and he knows that Laura's not going to tell him, and like they tell him, Laura's not going to tell him. So the only comfort he can really give her is the one thing that he can, which is the Coke, right? And then there you contrast it with James, where James almost has this, and I believe every guy kind of does this to a degree with girls at different points in their lives, where James has this like idea of Laura, right? Like he sees like only just the good, and he's like, well, let's get rid of and forgets all the bad or the darkness. And
But I
Laura,
feel for James because it is, I can't even put it into words how painful it is loving a girl who hates herself. A beautiful young woman, brunette in my case, who I was with for 4 years. It is unbelievably painful loving a woman who hates herself and despises herself. And you're trying to, I spent the whole relationship trying to convince her otherwise, that I did love her. I do love you. Whether you love yourself or not doesn't matter. I love you. She refused to believe it because such a girl will, that type is wired up in such a way that she will refuse to believe any man loves her, whether they do in fact or not. She a priori assumes that she is unlovable. No man can possibly love her. That is one fucking difficult relationship right there. Let me tell you from experience. So I understand these guys, the pain they have trying to love her, and she won't accept their love because she doesn't feel worth it.
well, and she says like and tearfully she tells James like the Laura that you knew was she's no longer there. Like she's gone, and she's not coming back. And and I think this is where some of her compassion comes in when she jumps off the motorcycle and just says, James, just leave me alone because she didn't want to drag James into her descent. I know that's how I interpret it. It's interesting that you relate to like you see Laura through a certain lens, and then like there's a part of me that I see Laura through another lens because of the trauma that she had gone through in her life and how it very personally it speaks to me. And this just shows you like we started off when you initially watched Twin Peaks, Laura Palmer is a dead body. That's all she is. And then through David's mastery, she becomes this this almost like kind of archetype that speaks for everybody in terms of um trauma in one way or another. And that's the to me it's like brilliant, like the brilliance of David Lynch and the brilliance of the Laura Palmer character. And we haven't even talked about Cheryl Lee's performance, which is just
It's excellent. It's
it's
excellent.
out of this
And I felt
world.
sorry for her in this because some of her performance consists in screaming and in having a look of horror on her face again and again and again. And she does it convincingly every single time. It never seems like she's acting. this look of horror on her face, in her eyes, and she's looking up at her father in horror. Excellent acting. That's you can't find just any actress to be able to do that. Yeah.
Well, and it's like Laura Palmer is a real like her performance is so brilliant in this movie. Laura Palmer is a real person in my
Oh yeah,
brain.
you have no doubt about it. Absolutely. Yeah.
It
She's
it is
100% convincing.
it blows my mind, and I think because I think people were in just in general were trying to knock David Lynch down a peg because he had like this string of success, which is this is the type of stuff that happens in Hollywood, right? Like I
Except
can
for
understand
Jim. Except
some
for
of the
Jim.
bad reviews for Fire Walk with Me. I get it to a degree initially when it came out, but you read those initial reviews when it came out, and it's absurd,
I
like the
remember.
way the
I
critics were
remember
talking about
it
this
got
film.
roasted, and I thought it was a bad movie. I made a mistake, but I didn't figure out its genius until I went back through all of the episodes of the first two seasons, then watched it. Then it made sense.
Yeah,
I hadn't done that when it came out. There was a lag that where I stopped watching Twin Peaks after about halfway through the second season, so I didn't care anymore. And the movie came out, and I was like, oh, I was just tuned off. So it
yeah.
flopped with me too. So I perfectly understand the way the critics reacted, but the film has aged very well. I think it's a masterpiece.
It's crazy to me, like just looking at her performance, I'm like, how was she not nominated for something? Like, is this
Well,
the
everybody
role
thought it
that
was a bad movie, and so you're not
yeah.
supposed to nominate an actor
It's
for an Academy Award who's in what everybody thinks is a bad movie.
yeah. It's just like
Hmm.
what asked to do in this film and like the way she's able
Okay,
to
Cheryl, now
use
turn to the camera with a look of absolute horror on your face.
yeah.
I mean, how did you do that with where the actress goes, okay, no problem. Now listen, Cheryl, you're going to have to scream again for what? How many screams are in the film? Five, six, seven? I lost count. But
Yeah.
one of them is convincing.
And so like yeah, she runs away and she goes into the
See, I would
Jacques
love to
cabin.
see that if someone had footage of Lynch directing Cheryl Lee. What a treasure that would be to have that break that fourth wall, uh, like the way Kubrick's daughter did when he she filmed a little documentary of Kubrick directing Jack Nicholson in The Shining, and it's a gem. It's a gem.
It's funny that you mentioned that because there was the scene with when Bob crawls through the window and they Cheryl talked about this and it was like take after take after take and she broke down. She's like, I'm not doing anymore. I'm
Oh,
not
I'm
doing anymore."
sure it was like with Shelley Duvall. She had to do something similar for The Shining, and she it broke her spirit. She was a nervous wreck, and Kubrick just wore her down. She got tired of having to look horrified and scream over and over again. So yeah, it was probably something similar for this actress.
Yeah, even Cheryl Lee's gone on record as saying it's when she sees there was a book written by David Lynch's daughter, The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer. It was written in between the release of the second season and the first after the in between when before the second season was released. I've read it. It, it's rough. It's rough. It's crazy to think like believe Jennifer was like 24 or something when she wrote this book. Um
This is Jennifer Lynch.
and
She's directed a few films too. I remember one with the actress Sherilyn Fenn was in it, where she played a woman with no limbs. Um, that was hard to watch too. So yeah, so his daughter has some similar taste.
Cheryl Lee said like when she sees people with that book, she says like still to this day she feels kind of violated because she's like fully encapsulated the Laura Palmer character. It's like, no, you're reading my diary.
How
Uh,
similar then is the diary to this film?
the diary heavily and I believe heavily inspired the film. Um, very much so, right? Because
Well,
you're
that's
basically
interesting.
following
I'd be interested
Laura's
in reading it then. Yeah, that's interesting.
following Laura's last day. Like we don't find out who the killer is, obviously, right? But if
But
you're
this
reading,
is written
it's
in
crazy.
between seasons one and two.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's crazy to me. I figured out who the killer was when I initially watched the show, I figured out who the killer was pretty quick, which is based on how Leland was acting. When I was pretty young, I was like, yeah, he did it. And so I don't understand how people didn't figure it out earlier, but I mean, I guess we'll save that discussion for the end. But so it cuts to she goes to Jacques and Leo's cabin. This is all talked about in the first season. She gets tied up, and we find Leland had been following Laura that night. He invades the cabin. He kidnaps him and Ronette Pulaski and brings them to the train car, in which is one of the most
It's brutal. Yeah,
brutal murder sequences.
yeah, it's rough.
It's rough, like with the music playing and the flashing lights and Leland saying like, "Don't
But
make me do
that
this."
aside, apart from the horror of it, that is just some excellent directing in that whole thing with all the lights and like. There's one shot that I find puzzling, but I love it anyway, where Leland is dragging the two girls and someone is shining flashlights on them. Who the fuck is
Yeah.
shining flashlights on them? Doesn't matter who. It looks cool. I love
Yeah. Yeah, some people have mentioned that. Who's flashing the flashlights? I'm like, that thought ever,
doesn't matter.
to me,
It
it's
just
never
looks cool.
even like it
A
looks cool.
director,
That's
he
why
knows
they
it's
did
going to
it.
look, as a director, he knows it's going to look cool on the screen. Who cares who's shining the lights? It just looks cool.
And
It adds tension to the scene, which is horrific.
so while this is going on, Renette is she's praying, basically saying like, I've been a bad person, yada yada yada.
Mhm.
And like an angel shows up,
The angel
and
from the painting shows up to redeem Laura. And that's the
yeah,
only redemption that she gets when this angel comes down. That's the only sort of gentle part of it. Because in reality, that what would happen is this person would have been murdered, and then after her soul gets out of her body, it'll lift up out of the body and go into the astral plane, and it'll look down for a while on what just happened and kind of survey it, and then go on about its business to prepare for the next lifetime. So there is, in a way, always a happy ending, no matter how tragic the situation is down here. There is a happy ending. There's always a happy ending because life goes on. Move on to another lifetime, another body, another situation. Maybe that won't happen to me this time. It sort of works that way.
yeah. Well, and so like Ronette, she gets saved. She prays. There's a part of me that almost feels like Laura's praying for her too to be saved. And then we see the man with the one arm. That's like I've stressed this enough. Like, well, at this point, if you've already been listening, like it's you have to watch the TV show to really understand what's going on in this movie. The man with the one arm, he tosses what I think he tosses the ring in, and Leland screaming like, "Don't make me do this!" And Laura, she puts on the ring. And there was a scene earlier where Dale Cooper is telling her to not take the ring, which is this has been a whole debate in the Twin Peaks community. Like, was Dale giving her the right information or not giving her the right information? Like, you don't know for sure. Leland, he kills his daughter, and then you see the shot of him carrying out her dead body wrapped in plastic. Um, he sees Ronette and sees her like kind of like I don't know, he's passed out, or he assumes she's dead, or he just doesn't care whether she's dead or not, right? Like he's
We find her in season one wandering along the train
yeah.
tracks.
Well, that's what brings Dale Cooper to Twin Peaks is because
Yeah.
she crossed state lines, right? That's the
Oh yeah,
only
that's right. Yeah,
reason
yeah.
why he would be in Twin Peaks to begin with. Uh, and then we see like a shot where it's Laura's in the Black Lodge. She's wearing like a black dress and she's smiling, and like Dale Cooper's got his hand on her shoulder, and she sees like an angel. Um, no,
The angel
I don't
from
know.
her painting that she
Yeah.
watched mysteriously disappear from that kitschy painting of people eating around a table with an angel above it, and then it disappears. That's kind of interesting. I like what he does with the pictures, and the picture of that door that the old woman gives her at the beginning of the film. And she doesn't know why she puts it on the wall, but it keeps changing. The door at one point is open, and it's like a portal to another dimension, almost like in the his film Lost Highway, where the character goes into a portal, it just turns black, and he goes into another dimension inside of his own house. It's like there's other realities. So I like what the those are nice touches that he does with the pictures.
Well, how do you interpret the ending? Like, is it a happy ending?
Only in the sense that I just defined that the
Yeah.
soul leaves the body. That's just one lifetime. There's plenty more to go, and I'm pretty sure Lynch believes that. I'm pretty sure that is his cosmology, reincarnation, karma, astral planes, and so forth. Um, yeah, it's not pleasant to watch. It's rough. This poor
Yeah.
girl, because we know, yeah, it's just a movie, but it's a movie about things that actually happen. They go on this planet. Things like that do happen, and they're pretty grim.
Well,
But
that's always been
life
me.
goes on. But it goes on to other lifetimes. Um, we Brian Weiss is the psychiatrist who discovered reincarnation through putting his patients into regressive hypnosis. And he says, we've all been murderers. We've all been murdered. So no point in pointing any fingers. We play every role all through the course of our hundreds of lifetimes. For some people, it's thousands, until we're done with the process. That's just one lifetime. The soul just gets to the other side, shrugs its shoulders, and says, well, let's try again.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that let's try again because I think that's like the huge theme in the third season is like kind of like the great reoccurrence where all of the like Dale, Cooper, Laura, they're stuck in this infinity loop, right? And at the end of
Awesome.
season three, in the final episode, Dale brings up or like Richard or however you want to interpret that whole thing. Let's just say Dale Cooper. Like he brings her up to her old house. I don't know what he was thinking there, to be entirely to be
I love that.
entirely obvious with you.
I love that ending for season three. It's marvelous because he left the door open, for more stuff. And there were rumors. I don't know. He was going to do a spinoff of Twin Peaks. It had a different title. I've forgotten what it was, but
Westera or something, or
yeah, I maybe it fizzled.
yeah, well, it's like she screams, all the lights go out, and then like we get a shot. They're both back in the Black Lodge, and Laura's whispering something in Dale's ear, and then you see like this look of horror on his face, and like there's a
That's
kind of just
pretty
kind of
amazing
support.
that they got Cheryl Lee back again.
Yeah,
That was pretty amazing. After
there's a
that,
part of me that's like the what she's whispering into his ear, which kind of supports like at least my little pet theory is like she's whispering like it's my dream, and
yeah.
it's just going to repeat
You
itself
don't know.
again.
That's the thing. Lynch is comfortable with ambiguities and uncertainties, and that's what makes him a great artist. That's why he's so much better than Mark Frost in terms of artistry.
Well, and it's like I said, like this is I to be honest with you, when I heard the third season was coming out, it was like, well, this is fantastic. It's great, right? Like, oh yeah, because we'll get to see 18 hours of
I think
David
this third
Lynch.
season is one of the best things David Lynch has ever done. I was so
But
impressed with it. I can't wait to go back through and watch it again. I've watched it twice now, I think. Um, I can't wait to go back through it again.
there was a part of me that like I was completely happy with the way Fire Walk with Me ended. Laura's in the lodge. She's found happiness in some degree or another. She's at peace. And that's all I ever wanted. Much like Dale. Like that's all I ever wanted was for Laura to be happy again.
Mhm.
And it's interesting. I guess to kind of wrap it up, well, I mean, because it's impossible to talk about this film without talking about the third season too, and a bunch of other like in the first season, the second season, all kind of ties together. And there's a part of me that's in this episode 17, you see they recreate this scene from Fire Walk with Me where she jumps off James's bike, but what ends up happening is like she screams randomly in Fire Walk with Me, and it's like, well, what did she see that she was screaming about, right? And most people just assume that she saw Bob in the forest, but what season three shows us, it was actually she saw Dale and she didn't know exactly who Dale was at that point. She had only seen her in a dream before, and she had written about Dale in her diary. This is why those pages were torn out. And Dale intercepts her on the way to Jacques' cabin, and like literally just it's like, well, all this stuff will happen. Like, she's not going to get killed. I'm not going to end up showing up to Twin Peaks. Like, all this horrible stuff that's happened. Like, what if we just, Dale goes, like, what if I just literally just take her out of this? Right. And he can't do it.
The
And
great
it's
thing about
that
Lynch,
scene, like,
the great thing about Lynch is that his universe is so flexible and elastic because there are all these different dimensions. If he wants to, he can do parallel realities. He can do alternate versions of events because his cosmology is so large and flexible. You know, he's not nailed down to a boring realist paradigm. Realism is the death of all art. That's the thing. Hollywood had gotten this wrong for year after year after year after year when it only gave Academy Awards to films that were realistic, like Out of Africa, let's say, or which is a terribly boring film. Um, it was one after one piece of shit realist film after the next because Hollywood has this stupid idea in its mind, or did have, um, that real art is based on realism, which is an old, outworn idea from 19th century realistic novels, like by the Zola brothers. Boring. Realism is not the correct paradigm. It is degenerate. It's a form of cultural degeneracy. That's what it is. It's the death of art. And so Lynch understands that. So he has no interest in realism. And consequently, he can do anything he wants with his universe. He can do alternate versions of Dale, alternate versions of events that might have happened, but they may have happened over here in a parallel dimension. So he's got this very astral, flexible cosmology that he can bend and warp like dough and do whatever he wants with it, give himself permission to do anything. That's sort of what comes across in that third season is the how infinite his cosmos is. That's what I like about it because it just opens up in that third season from a small town to just all of these cosmic portals and forces and spirits and so forth. It's really a major achievement, in my opinion, that third season.
well, you nailed it on the head. And this is, to me, this is why Twin Peaks in general is just, it's so emotional in the sense of it's because it's interspliced. There's bits where it's like horrifically real, right? Like we mentioned, where Laura realizes it's her dad, but it's interspliced with like this surrealism aspects and this almost kind of expressionistic type of acting that's like almost kind of like a throwback to like the old like silent film era, right? Where it was like hyper expressive
Yep.
uh facial emotions. And
Non-realistic was what silent cinema was. Um,
it's yeah, well, it's almost like to get more real than real, you have to go, like, as you've pointed out many times in this podcast thus far, almost to this astral plane
yeah.
where things aren't, they don't make sense entirely, right? Like you're dealing with perceptions, you're
Hollywood,
dealing with expressions.
they finally changed their minds with Lord of the Rings. That was the first non-realistic film, as far as I'm aware, that they gave the Academy Award to. Like in 1977, the best film of that year was Star Wars. There's no two ways about that. And I think they gave the award to Ordinary People, some piece of shit realist film, Ordinary People that now no one remembers. Uh, Everybody remembers Star Wars. That's for
Yeah.
damn sure. And finally, with Lord of the Rings, they couldn't deny it any longer. These are great works of art. Who cares whether it's fantasy or non-realistic? This is a great fucking work of art. So it took them a while for that to break that realist aesthetic out of the Academy Awards, which I don't watch anyway, and I don't care about. It doesn't They don't interest me.
Yeah, well, this is also like, I mean, this is where sometimes I have like a lot of disagreements in terms of people with like just art in general and stuff like that. And they're like, I don't like what, like I don't understand. I can't make any sense of that. And I'm like, because you're looking at it the wrong way. Like you're trying to look at it, like you're trying to rationalize it and like view it in like kind of like these materialistic terms when like you can't be doing that with this particular art. Like you got to go off like intuitively. You got to go off like the emotions that it's evoking out of you, right? Like you almost kind of have to put yourself in a different world. And then once you do that, like the emotions that you feel are going to feel more real than real is the best way I can describe it. Uh, and to me, this is why like David's work in general, and in particular this film, works so well. And like we've discussed it I don't know, quite some time now, right? And Laura means something different to you, and Laura means something different to me. You interpret the supernatural part in terms of like this is literally happening. I kind of laid out my theory that it, it it's not that it's not happening, but it's more so that we're living inside the dream of this one particular girl who's going through these traumatic events. Um, which is, I mean, they're both of them are very valid interpretations. And if you were to talk to David, he would probably have, well, he's not going to tell you anything, but he'd
Oh,
probably
he
be like,
wouldn't say
yeah, just go with it.
yeah, yeah, go whatever you want.
Do
That's what he's
you know what I mean? There's a
not going to
there's
explain to you any more than Kubrick would explain to you what his films meant. He's like, no, that's your business.
there's a part of me that almost wishes like David's getting pretty old now, so like I'm hoping that maybe
I
we
hope
get
he
like a
makes
season.
something else good before he goes.
Yeah, I'm
'Cause we are starting to get some final films from our great directors. Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis comes out later this year, and advance reviews are already saying it's a masterpiece. It's a return back to the great director of the '70s who made The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, which I cannot wait to see. I will go out to see that in the movie theater for sure. For the first time in years, I went out to see a movie, Dune 2, and it was a completely different experience. There's a half hour now full of commercials. It's like nobody told me I had to sit here for a half hour with a bunch of stupid commercials. It almost ruined it for me.
yeah,
It's just different. It was fun, but I can see that because the last movie film that I went out to see was Star Wars Episode 8, I think, whenever that came out, maybe
yeah,
6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. But I'll go out to see Megalopolis, and also there's another Mad Max film on the way, Furiosa, uh, made by George Miller. Definitely, I'm a huge Mad Max fan, so this will be the fifth one. I'm hoping it's good. So there's a few films that are these aging directors are. Um, Steven Spielberg is planning on filming Stanley Kubrick's screenplay for Napoleon. He wrote this screenplay for Napoleon that he couldn't get funding for, and it frustrated him. So he made Barry Lyndon instead. But Spielberg intends to film the Napoleon screenplay as like a Netflix streaming miniseries. So I'm hoping he'll sign off with that. We know it'll be good if it has a screenplay by Stanley Kubrick. And that's, as far as I know, the only screenplay he ever wrote by himself on his own. So I'll be fascinated to see what Spielberg does with that. And then Martin Scorsese's most recent film was very, very good, Killers of the Flower Moon. And these directors are all now 80-ish. And James Cameron is
yeah.
cranking out these great Avatar films. I thought Avatar 2 was amazing. It was way better than the first one. Looking forward to 3, 4, and 5. He's got them all lined up for the next 10 years. These great directors that I grew up with, or most of them are signing off with some final masterpieces. And I'm hoping Lynch comes up with something before he dies.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's something Twin Peaks. I'm
That'd be
hoping
great.
like because
I was hoping
I
for the
love it.
spin-off thing he was planning, but well, we'll see what he does.
Yeah, we'll see what he does. But I just final thoughts is, like I love this film. Like I said, watch the first season, watch all the stuff, and then I'd say watch the first season, watch the second season, watch Fire Walk with Me, then watch The Return. That's
That's right.
that's how I would watch
That's
it,
the correct order. Yeah, I agree with that.
you know.
Yep.
There's also kind of like a part where you could watch the first season up until they solve Leland. They figure out that Leland was the one, or Laura's father's the one that killed her, and then skip all the stuff in the second season up until the
All the
final
Mark
episode,
Frost, all the Mark Frost scripts.
and then watch Fire Walk with Me, and then watch The Return. And I love talking Twin Peaks. So if you
Oh yeah,
guys enjoyed
me too.
this conversation, I mean, we
We'll do
can.
more. Maybe we'll go over the Twin Peaks. Right now, for me, it's just a matter of time. I'm under a time crunch because I'm teaching two classes, one of which is a film class, and now Josh has assigned us to watch through Deadwood, and there's 3 seasons there, 10 shows each. So it's not a good time right now to go over the Twin Peaks TV show while I'm going through Deadwood for the movie class, the Thursday night movie class that we do. Um, so,
Well,
and by the way, if anybody wants to subscribe and join that class, it's $20 a month for a subscription. And every Thursday night, we meet on Zoom at 6 p.m. MST to talk about 2 or 3 films. Now we're up to, we started off with just 1 film, then 2, and now Josh is juggling around 3 films. Now he's adding in TV shows. We're having a lot of fun. So you can sign up for that if you go on to my Teachable website. Just type in the John David Ebert School online on Google, John David Ebert School, and it'll come up with the link to, and look specifically, type in specifically Thursday night movie night, and it'll come up and you can enroll if that interests you.
I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to having you back on, John, and
Oh yeah, that
have
was
a
a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that, Chris. Your enthusiasm for these films is infectious. Absolutely.
yeah, I love Twin Peaks, so friggin' I guess we can I guess you could just release this on your channel too, John, if you wanted to, like just
I
the
sure
full
can.
unedited.
I'm
I
happy to
guess you
do
could
that.
do that. And
Um,
then I guess it would help, like, maybe get me some viewers, or
yeah,
I'm assuming your audience will enjoy this conversation. So
absolutely. Yeah, I have 25,000 subscribers, so yeah, that's a considerably larger audience. You might get some traffic coming your way from that. So
yeah.
I'm happy to post it.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll hit.
Okay, well, we'll end there, Chris. And so until next time, maybe in a couple weeks, we'll do another episode. Uh, keep in touch. I'm
Yeah, sounds fantastic, John.
okay, Doug. Pleasure talking with you, Chris. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye bye.
Yeah, you too, bro.